WNYC Studios is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
Brian Lehrer on WNYC. And as some of you know, another thing we're doing during this membership drive is a series at the end of the show that we're calling Spring Cleaning, organizing your stuff and your life in 6 different ways over 6 different days. Day 4, focusing on cleaning and organizing strategies for neurodivergent people. Because if you have ADHD, depression, anxiety, or other what you might call executive functioning challenges, the prospect of doing a big house or apartment or office cleaning can feel more overwhelming than for many other people. For example, there can be this all or nothing mentality, especially with some people with ADHD, from what I've read, where if you're not doing a full overhaul, it somehow doesn't count. And then the task becomes so intimidating that maybe you don't start at all. But there are ways to approach cleaning that don't set you up for failure, even in that context. So today we're happy to be joined by Casey Davis, therapist, host of the podcast Struggle Care, and author of How to Keep House While Drowning, a gentle approach to cleaning and organizing. She also runs the popular TikTok called Domestic Blisters. Great name, Domestic Blisters. Casey, thanks so much for joining us today. Welcome to WNYC.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Do a lot of people with ADHD really struggle with getting started, that sort of task paralysis where you look at the mess and your brain just freezes before you even get going?
Oh, absolutely. And a lot of people mistake it for being unmotivated, but motivation is a different skill set than task initiation. Motivation is wanting to do something or seeing the value in it, whereas task initiation is actually sending the right signals into your brain and body to start the ball rolling in that direction.
What are some strategies for getting over that initial hump?
Well, first, I would say that if you're in a spot where you're kind of struggling with like day-to-day mess or day-to-day organization, and you kind of mentioned this, like that all or nothing thinking, not jumping right into, you know what, I'm going to clean everything. I'm going to do a big spring cleaning. I'm going to do a huge declutter. You really want to start really small. So like think of the smallest step you can take and then like half it. So that's the first thing, is you want to start with something really small.
That's a good way to go, whether you're neurodivergent or not, right?
Yes.
And you've talked a lot about the idea that cleanliness is treated almost like a moral virtue. Some people say cleanliness is next to godliness. Maybe you've heard that cliche, and that being messy can make people feel ashamed or like they failed as adults. Where do you think that messaging comes from, and how do you help people separate cleanliness from self-worth?
Well, it comes from a lot of different places, and I think sometimes it hits women harder because we tend to associate cleaning as a woman's job or as a mother's job, and so it gets kind of, there's this long history of, gender roles and things get kind of bundled up in, if I'm not good at this, then I'm not a good woman or a good wife or a good mother. But I've seen this with everyone. When you struggle with cleaning, when you struggle with day-to-day organization, a lot of people with ADHD grow up with messages that they're lazy, that they're undisciplined, because from the outside, it can seem like that's the problem. So we internalize those messages, and it makes it even harder for us to find systems that work for us, because anytime we struggle, we feel like it's a moral failing, when the reality is you just haven't found the systems and the tools that work for your brain.
It kind of relates maybe to this idea that people crave organization, but sometimes the organizing itself becomes overwhelming. Like you buy bins and containers and systems, and suddenly the bins themselves become the clutter, or you can't remember where anything is because the system is so complicated, even though you set it up. So what makes an organizing system actually sustainable for neurodivergent people in particular, because that's, the specialty that we're talking about in this segment, but really also for anybody?
Well, we tend to, as ADHD people, we tend to hyper-focus on things. Like, we love a new project. And so I think all of us have fallen into the trap of deciding that organizing is going to be our new project. And we buy all the organizing things and we read all the organizing books and we get everything organized, but we're not actually thinking about the day-to-day systems that work for us. And so, we step back and it's been 48 hours and we haven't eaten enough or slept enough, but we have this beautiful new closet with all of our shoes and individual shoe boxes. And we never really stop to realize that the labor and energy it takes to pull a shoebox out and take shoes out and then put the shoes back in and that we're not realistically going to do that every day. And so it's really better to look at the way you're already living. And so, for example, if you're wanting to get to if things aren't functional for you, because that's the first step. It's okay. If you're messy and your life is functional, you don't actually need to fix anything. But if you're going, okay, I don't really have enough clean clothes to wear, and I'm stressed in the morning looking for clean clothes. Because what I tend to do is take clothes off, and if it's not quite dirty, not quite clean, I throw it onto my chair. Or if I take my dirty clothes off, I throw them right onto the floor by my bed, and then I can't find anything. Instead of going from that to what I'm going to do is get brand new laundry baskets in my laundry room. And every time I take clothes off, I'm not going to put them on the chair. I'm not going to put them on the ground. I'm going to walk those clothes over to the laundry room and put them in. What I say instead is get a cheap laundry basket and make sure there's one in every single room of your house. So that anytime you take off an article of clothing, you're never more than a step or two away from being able to toss it in a bin. And put those laundry baskets where you are naturally dropping clothes on the ground, even if those are weird places. Because you need to get as close to what you're already doing so that the change is sustainable.
That's really interesting. Excuse me, and it sounds very useful. Here's a question from a listener who writes, can you ask your guests about what to do when you're a woman who is being judged by other women, especially in the workplace, about being disorganized? I find that the judgment comes very heavily from people who don't struggle with this as a problem and pass severe judgment on you to the point where it's detrimental to your career, even when you really try hard, if you're not able to keep up. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yeah. And again here, I would want to sort of delineate who is the mess affecting, because there's a difference between the way that I'm organized at work is impacting other people's ability to do work or is impacting my own ability to do work. That's really different than this doesn't affect you. My work is still good, but I look like Einstein's desk. And in that case, sometimes it's just an attitude adjustment of, you know what, this is the way that I work best. And so people can think what they think. And there might be the case where someone is judging you that's in charge of your promotion. And you just have to have an honest conversation with yourself and with that person. Hey, is there an issue with my productivity? Is there an issue with what I'm producing? Because this is the best way for me to produce that. But if the way that you are organized or disorganized at work is affecting your productivity or it's impacting the people around you, then you want to look for some collaborative solutions that are going to mitigate that harm to somebody else. And it doesn't mean that you have to turn into Marie Kondo overnight. Again, you can take small changes. And if you have a documented disability like ADHD, you really have to use your wisdom in whether you're going to share that with anyone at work, because depending on who you are and where you work, that could be a boon to you because you could gain some understanding, or it could cause some judgment.
And that's where we leave it with Casey Davis, therapist, host of the podcast Struggle Care, and author of How to Keep House While Drowning, a gentle approach to cleaning and organizing. You can also find her on TikTok at Domestic Blisters. Casey, this was very helpful. Thank you very much.
Of course.
Tomorrow we'll talk about organizing your kids' stuff. But first, stay tuned for all of it with Allison Stewart. Among other things, the new Broadway show Giant, which explores anti-Semitism in the work of acclaimed children's author Roald Dahl. They'll talk about that and other things on All of It with Allison Stewart, coming right up after the latest news here on WNYC. Thanks for listening to us today.
WNYC's journalism and storytelling is heard by millions of passionate listeners. Sponsors of our programming gain our listeners' attention and their respect. Learn about how your organization can support WNYC and WNYC Studios at sponsorship.wnyc.org.